Hi, everyone. I'm Teri Evans. I'm the Senior Communications Director at Child's Path. And today I am joined by Aaron Sojourner, who is an Associate Professor at the University of Minnesota's Carlson School of Management. He is a labor economist and has previously served as a senior economist at the White House Council of Economic Advisors. So welcome, Aaron. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Sure. Well, a major area of your research is early childhood education, and I'm excited to talk to you about that and talk about why investing in a child during the first 5 years of life is even more crucial than people realize. So let's get right to it.
Sure.
So, Aaron, you have said that we ask the most of families with young children when they have the least, and that policy is set up to make more public investment when kids are older, but it really should be the other way around. What does the research say about that?
Yeah, so when kids are young, parents are younger. And when parents are younger, they have less private resources. So they've had less years in their career to work and save than they will when their kids are older. They have less experience in the labor market, so they have less current earning power. And they do have more future income, but in some research I did, we documented that parents with younger children actually have lower credit scores than parents with older children. So while they have more future income, they actually have less ability to access future income. At the same time, the public policy across state, local, and federal government, instead of compensating for that, just reinforces that and makes it worse. So once kids hit kindergarten, once they age 5, for the next 13 years, the public invests about $13,000 per year per kid on average. And that's primarily through the K-12 system in their care and education. In the first 5 years of kids' life, we're only investing about a ninth of that per year. So we're only investing about $1,500 instead of $13,000 per year. So it creates investment shortage in young kids in the first 5 years of life, where there's not private resources. Families don't have private resources to invest, and there's not public resources. And so there's just not resources going into kids having high quality care experiences in those first 5 years of life. And it has real lifelong consequences for their development.
When they don't have that access to early care, early learning, they are more likely to drop out of high school later. Am I correct on that? More likely, they're likely to earn a lot less, right? There is research out there that, having those first 5 years and having that early care, early learning adds to their wages for the rest of their life, right? So there are so many devastating consequences if they don't have that attention, care, and learning in those first 5 years. You found that correct in terms of the research?
Yeah. There's very compelling evidence from a lot of different independent experiments and studies with various research designs. The easiest to understand are experiments, though, because what they do is they'll have a group of young children and they'll flip coins and they'll randomly assign, some of the kids to have free access to high quality care experiences, and other kids who are not systematically different in any other way except it came up tails when they were randomizing, they don't have access to those high quality care experiences. They don't. And then you follow them out a year, 2 years, 5 years, and you can see the kids developing differently. You can see test scores, cognitive growth, behavioral scores in the first year and the first 2 years during the care experiences. You can see big gaps opening up, big advantages where especially if you look at kids from low-income families, families where the parents maybe don't have a lot of earning power, the kids who have access to these high-quality care experiences tend to develop much faster, build more skills, build more capacities. They all go into their whatever's available in the community, the experiment's over, wait 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, give tests again, maybe third grade. And you can see still differences between the kids who were randomly assigned access to these experiences versus kids who were randomly assigned not any extra access. And actually, the kids from low-income families who had access to these high-quality care experiences, at least in some studies, end up looking basically like scoring just as well as middle-class kids, upper middle-class kids on a lot of these tests. What that tells me, and what that should tell all of us, is that it's not something fundamentally different about the kids, that it's something fundamentally different about the care experiences that they have. And then even if you go out, wait another 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and follow them out into adulthood, which has been done. People have, Nobel laureate economist James Heckman, others, have followed the participants in these experiments and other kinds of research designs forward. And again, you see higher earnings, higher home ownership, more college attendance, college graduation, higher educational attainment, reduced criminality, reduced use of public benefits. And so if you think about this like early investment in kids, it does cost something to the public up front or to the community up front, but it is an investment. It creates capacities in these kids that then will over time pay off, and it creates a stream of benefits. Sure. Just like investing in the stock market or a bond or anything like that.
Yeah, I've heard you mention about the investment in the stock market. How does the investment in children at this age compare to the stock market returns?
Yeah, so again, this Nobel laureate Jim Heckman at University of Chicago, he has a study where he tried to estimate the internal rate of return to one of these early childhood experiments. And he gets numbers around 10, 11, 13, 15% under different assumptions, modeling assumptions. And the way businesses do this is like they look and they say, we could invest in a new plant over there or new marketing over there, different uses of the capital. Let's see which which use of the capital is going to deliver higher returns, and deploy the capital where it's most productive. If you're investing in low-income kids' early care and education, you're getting 11+% return. If you look at the stock market, you look at sort of how is capital productive on average in the private economy. A good proxy for that is what's the rate of return in the stock market, because that's what the private economy does with capital. And historically, it's about 6% rate of return. So this is like, maybe not quite double, but double the rate of return is actually like much more than double in terms of delivering value, because there's exponential growth. And so, I don't know, these numbers can sound like they're close together, but they're actually really far apart in terms of how big the benefits are, but they are far away. So in the future, and that's, I think, part of why we don't take advantage of this investment opportunity. But, if you care about fighting inequality and you care about breaking like intergenerational patterns of inequality, making sure like fulfilling the American dream that we all have an equal opportunity, this is a great way to make a difference, because again, we don't choose our life circumstances. We're born into those circumstances. It's not fair. Some of us are lucky, some of us are unlucky. But as a community and as a country, we try to I think it's an ideal that we share, most of us share, that kids should have equal opportunity in America. So if you wait until 5, you're waiting too long.
Right, right. What you bring up a good point to kind of segue into is the child tax credit, right? That has changed in 2021 and expanded. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it was, it's structured um, properly, or do you think there should be different parameters on it? What are your thoughts on that in terms of that investment? Coming back to parents.
Yeah, so that's basically like a child allowance, is
Right.
how it's called in a lot of places. Basically, like a payment to parents of young children, or this is actually a payment to parents of all children, which is a little bit more generous for younger children. Um, and it's really designed to combat child poverty. So it's really designed, it's about $3,600 a year per kid. And it's so, it's a substantial amount of money, but not a huge amount of money. That's enough to, if you're like struggling near the poverty line, enough to lift a lot of people out of poverty in it. And it's doing that, and it's very exciting. So it's a step in the right direction, but it's not an answer. It's enough to maybe lift people above a very low poverty threshold, but it's not enough to actually, meet the needs of the investment shortage that we have in kids.
So what would you propose? Like if you had a choice?
And I would support a lot of different options, but I do have a proposal that we made through the Hamilton Project at the Brookings Institution. And what we proposed, along with my colleague Liz Davis, was basically a big expansion in investment in high quality early care and education services. And so what that means is, so I have a study where we looked at, what would the impact on kids' development be using data from one of these kinds of experiments I was talking about before. We can see what the impact is of this high quality care offer. And then we did some economic and econometric analysis, and we tried to figure out what would the impact be if we gave the family cash that is like cost equivalent to that high quality care offer. And what we saw is that the impact on kids' development would only be about a third or a quarter as big. So for the same cost, subsidizing, opening up access to high quality care makes a much bigger impact on kids' development than just giving parents the cash. Mm-hmm. Why? Because it's basically requires, the only way it has value is if the kid takes up the high quality care experience. And if you give the parents cash, they're going to use it for all kinds of things. And some, a lot of them will use it for things that benefit the kids, or a lot of it that will benefit the kids' development. But it will also be used for other things that are probably very important priorities for the family overall, but are not necessarily, for the kids' development. So, and some of those things might not generate social returns in the same way.
Absolutely. And so basically what you're saying, in terms of the proposal, is rather than writing a check to have that in the form, the amount of money go to kind of like, whether it's a voucher or whatever it is, that they can apply to a high quality early care and early learning experience.
Yeah. I mean, I can get into the details. It's basically, what we say is, for kids from low-income families, like, let's make Head Start a real option, because right now Head Start is underfunded so low that it only can serve about, about 15%, 20% of the kids who are eligible. So it's not a real option for most kids who are eligible. So let's fund that so it's a real option for kids who are eligible. Let's then also run a series of procurement competitions. So work with the states to contract for slots in different communities, and use this as a way to learn about the costs of producing high quality care in different communities. So, have a very structured bidding process with accountable standards for quality. Right. And, the winners of those competitions are awarded contracts, and then families can go and claim those slots. But you learn something valuable in that process about the cost of production. And then you can take that information and you can create vouchers, and you have a value now for those vouchers that will support high quality care production. And then you can give families access to those vouchers, and they can go out and find care in other providers who are also, meet high quality standards. And providers out in the world can compete with one another to provide high quality care that the families in their local community value. So it's not just pure public production. It's not just pure Head Start or school-based care.
How is it the difference in experience, the quality of the experience, which you had mentioned before, which I thought that was really important? It's not just about being home with your child, right? It's about the actual experience. So if we can talk a little bit about that, and then just tagging on that, how being in an early learning setting can actually help parenting.
So there've been a lot of studies about the quality of care in non-parental settings, and then different studies about the quality of care by parents, and different ways of looking at it, and blah, blah, blah. But we tried to build like a unified view of this by stitching together a bunch of different data sets and using a very consistent lens to look across them to try to get a holistic view. And what we saw is that, like from the kids' perspective, care quality matters. Better, more high quality care experiences are better. The kid is awake, a certain number of hours every day. There's a certain number of days in their there's 365 days in their first year. There's 365 days in their second year. They have a time budget, and they have to be cared for all those hours. And either they're going to be having high quality experiences that are enriching and safe and, stimulating and nurturing and promote development, or they're not, and whatever setting they're in, whatever experience they're having, it's having an effect on their growth, for better or for worse. And so there's really no way around that, and so you really have to look at like the kid's whole experience. The quality of that experience has an impact on their development. It has an impact on their life trajectory. And what we found in this one study that you were touching on is that there were, again, kids who were randomly assigned to have access to high quality care, and those who were randomly assigned not to. The ones who were randomly assigned, on average, they took up about 18 hours a week of high quality care. The parents chose that. What we saw was that not only did the kids' scores go up, but we saw that the quality of parenting went up in that group too. So on average, the ones who took up and the ones who didn't take up, the ones who had that offer, the quality of care on average went up, of parenting care. What we think of it is like there's an exhaustion effect. Like it's easy to produce high quality care as a parent in the first hour of the 17th hour is pretty hard. And people talk about quality of care, but it's linked to quantity of care. And so if you can create some psychological space for parents, if you can give them a relief, if you can give them a break, it allows them to parent better in the time when they are parenting. and the kid has maybe a higher quality experience in that non-parental setting, maybe than they would in that 17th hour of parenting when the parents burnt out.
Right, right. So it just basically it's a point of diminishing returns. They have so many other things going on, and then at that 17th hour, it's like they're not really giving that much, and they're doing everything that they can. It's not that they don't want to. Yeah.
Again, we ask the most of families when they have the least, and it creates an investment shortage, and it creates an investment opportunity that our communities need to recognize and put resources towards, because right now we're leaving families alone and unsupported in the time when their dual responsibility of care and earning is the heaviest in the first 5 years of their kids' lives. And they need our support. We give it later, but they need it then. And it creates big benefits to provide that support. So we really should do it.
Great. I think we will end it there. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. So much great insight and sharing your research details and everything like that. I mean, it's a really enlightening conversation, and I know that people will get so much out of it. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your time, and it was a great interview. Nice talking with you. Thanks.